Hi, today we're covering the disappearance and eventual death of Sheila Kearns. Sheila was a 43-year-old woman who was rather passionate about her job at Mount Rainier National Park. However, one fall morning in 1996, she would not show up for her work shift. This was a red flag to almost all of her coworkers, as they sensed something was off almost immediately. Now, Mount Rainier is one of Washington's most stunning landmarks, but for Sheila's friends and family, its majesty is now overshadowed by a tragic past. Eventually, somewhere around 7 months after her disappearance, Sheila's body was found in a park. And with this, the old wounds of her disappearance back in 1996 would be reopened, leaving everyone shaken as the worst had come to pass. Records would go on to show that her former co-workers and most those involved still greatly wonder what tragedy had befallen the woman they had known so well. And eventually they would go on to share their thoughts with the public, going so far as to mention that she was beautiful, and as another work colleague would go on to state, she was absolutely beautiful. She had these incredibly clear eyes that reminded me of the mountain streams we had up there. It seemed that Martin had some rather fond memories of Sheila, as she had left a deep, long-lasting impact upon those who she was close to. According to other co-workers, Sheila Kearns had arrived at Paradise Inn at Mount Rainier National Park in August of 1996, going so far as to say around August most kids go back to school, so the crews are kind of down. But we still need to finish up for about 6 weeks. As it just so happens, Sheila, being a rather positive people person, led to her working at the front desk of the inn, and it was noted that she was always kind to both the guests and her co-workers, as one individual would go on to state that she would always have a rather infectious smile as she greeted them, noting that she was a really nice person, while others would go on to state her undeniable love for the park and for Mount Rainier itself. It is important to understand what events were occurring at and around the time when Sheila Kearns went missing on October 4th, 1996, as it is a tradition for employees at Mount Rainier to mark the end of every season with a bonfire and a party, one of which Sheila delighted in saying goodbye to each and every individual personally. It was just something she genuinely enjoyed doing. After the party, it was noted that Sheila was in the process of moving into her new employee housing unit, which was occurring within a span of a few days. So it would have been between this social event and the day she was noted as missing, which an individual would have had the window to do potential harm to Sheila, or for her to get lost and hurt. One individual would go on to state that she was so physically elated that she lit up the room, as Sheila stated that she had gotten hired for the winter crew and that she was excited about working together with them. Unfortunately, this would be the last time that she would be seen by said individual, as Sheila Kearns would go missing on October 4th, 1996. As it just so happens, due to it having occurred in a national park, the FBI would become involved, and said FBI agents would note that at the time she was reported missing, Sheila was moving to her new employee housing, and that it was her employers who noticed that she was missing and acted upon that by reporting her as having been missing to the authorities. But they did not only do that, immediately the manager had gone on to check not only where she could have potentially been, but also double check her belongings and her cabin, which both seemed to be perfectly intact, as if she had never had the opportunity to even reach them. Now, the location where this occurred was Mount Rainier National Park, which is an American national park located in Pierce County, about 60 miles south of Seattle, and said park covers around 370 square miles, along with being encircled by a myriad of rather well-traveled woodland trails, along with having a large amount of glaciers and snowfields. But it must also be noted, in particular for what might have happened to Sheila, that Mount Rainier is indeed inhabited by cougars, black bears, bobcats, both deer and elk, meaning there was no shortage of potentially dangerous animals or even predators. However, this is not to say that it is an inherently extremely dangerous place, as many have gone to the national park and experienced everything from the spectacular scenic views, the wildflower meadows, in particular during the summer months, the beautiful old-growth forests, along with the myriad of waterfalls. It is just important to note the potential dangers and the more natural causes of an incident like this occurring, rather than just automatically jumping to the conclusion that it occurred at the hands of a human being. Especially since Mount Rainier has only had one other case of a traumatic death or murder of an individual occurring within the national park. After authorities were informed of Sheila's disappearance, they would embark on a 3-day extensive search, which, while there's little overall information about it, we know they found nothing. As the Seattle Times would go on to write in 1997, park officials first believed that Sheila might have become lost on a trail, but then later they would proceed to theorize that she might have been abducted. They also would note that winters were a rather rough time at Mount Rainier, and within weeks of the search, a rather sizable snowfall would set in. Then, several months later, in May 1997, after spring had thawed the snow away, a volunteer who was setting up a navigation course for park rangers would go on to find the skeletal remains at the community building in the old Logmire campground, which was roughly 4 miles away from the inn. And to go into further detail, the remains themselves were scattered in an area which was estimated to be around 300 yards. Due to this, there were many who asked, how could they not have found her, being the fact that she was incredibly close to the actually populated areas of the park. And as almost 40 years have passed, the question of who or what slew Sheila Kearns remains completely unanswered. Quite frankly, there's no clues, and it seems that it will never be answered. In part, this is because when Sheila had immediately gone missing, the FBI had proceeded to investigate several potential suspects. However, they were not even able to get a person of interest due to every single suspect being cleared and having an alibi. However, one of the special agents in charge of the investigation would go on to state, just because someone was cleared in an investigation years ago doesn't mean new information won't make them suspects again. However, with Mount Rainier being the site of only one other death, which was actually found out to be a murder, it doesn't particularly bode well for the theory that she was murdered. Wrapping up the general investigation on Sheila Kearns' mysterious disappearance at Mount Rainier National Park, as time has gone by, 2 main theories have emerged. Theory 1 involves the speculation that Sheila may have met with an unfortunate accident while exploring part of the park, and it just so happens a predator or another type of animal, or even the weather itself, scattered her remains. There's also the theory surrounding foul play, which quite a few individuals who knew Sheila heavily believe in. In particular, could she have been moved by a human being, then dumped at the site later, or one of the individuals in charge of the search, or having taken part in the search, potentially guiding people away from this area during the initial search? In conclusion, Mount Rainier is both a place of beauty and solace, as it now holds a shadowy tale of loss and unanswered questions for those who knew Sheila Kearns, as her story serves as a reminder that even in the most picturesque of settings, mysteries and deaths can unfold, leaving behind a lingering sense of disquietude and unease. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do so hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.